The Carolina Hurricanes have announced that Ron Francis has been relieved of his duties as general manager. Today we're going to discuss the move and some potential candidates who might replace him. And that's coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams. So if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So as I mentioned off the top, the Carolina Hurricanes have announced that General Manager Ron Francis has been relieved of his duties and he will now move into a new role of President of Hockey Operations. Make no mistake about it though, this is not a promotion. They also included that the new General Manager will report directly to the owner. That's not always a commonplace. Usually you have ownership, the president, GM, coach, and so on. So the fact that the new GM will report directly to the owner, it certainly indicates that Ron Francis basically has been stripped of all power within the Carolina Hurricanes organization. Obviously, it's a pretty decent move on their part to kind of keep him in the fold. You know, he's been part of that franchise for so long. You know, if you look back at the history of the Carolina, back to the Hartford Whaler days, you know, he played for that franchise for a long time. He was an assistant GM for a long time before becoming GM. So it's probably a good idea to keep him in the fold, keep him in the mix in some capacity. Not that he can't be relevant and productive in some ways, but general manager just didn't seem to be his calling. I mean, really, he's been there for 4 years. And we're going to take a quick look here at his history. Just some contracts that are on the Hurricanes books right now that are certainly questionable. And obviously the new owner, Tom Dundon, is, we've all seen here, is very hands-on. He wants to learn the business of hockey inside and out, and wants to make sure this team has a better chance to win, make it more competitive, get the fans re-engaged, to boost attendance and so on. And this is one of the first steps of many that he's going to go through to get that done. So if you take a look back at Ron Francis's history as general manager of the Hurricanes here, really, to me, the thing that sticks out the most is the lack of activity in the trade front. I mean, there was very, very few trades where he actually did like a player-for-player trade. Obviously, his motto was to build through the draft, which is a good motto, and they have drafted some decent players during his tenure as general manager. We'll take a look at the draft picks here momentarily, but at the same time, there's obviously a lot of needs that are lacking on this team to get them over the hump. They currently have the longest playoff drought in the NHL. And they have a hard time in the last number of years being competitive on the ice. A lot of times they're close to getting in the playoffs, but just they always seem to find a way to fall short. And Francis really, in my opinion, could have done more to kind of boost this team over the top to get them into the playoffs. And like this year was another example where he kind of stood pat. It looks as though, I mean, I don't think they're going to be hiring from within this time around. They could go that route, but the fact that they're starting a broad search, they didn't name one of the assistants like an interim or anything like that. So my belief is they're going to bring in somebody completely new with a whole new philosophy and kind of start from scratch here is what my opinion is on this. But we'll see what Tom Dundon, what approach he takes here in the coming days. But the new search for a new GM is underway, and we're going to discuss some potential candidates. Take a look at his trade history. Like, there's just very little there. I mean, he did a lot of accumulation of picks. There was a lot of deals of players going out, picks coming in, which is good. He signed the odd free agent, like he brought back Justin Williams. You know, some decent little moves, but there just wasn't anything significant. I mean, they've had a real hard time in the net. Obviously, Cam Ward is not quite as solid a goalie as he was in his younger days, and he should not be, or was not expected to be playing the load of games that he's been. They brought in, started with Eddie Lack a few years ago. That didn't work out. I mean, Eddie Lack's never really been a great NHL goalie in my opinion. Then he brings in Scott Darling, which he acquired for a third-round pick. So the fact that he didn't give up much to get him was good, but then before he ever even played a game, he signs him to a 4-year, $16 million extension. And now Scott Darling in his first year with the Hurricanes is the worst save percentage in the NHL. So that deal, that's looking real bad on Ron Francis right now. The other contract that I think that's currently on the books that it's not the worst thing he ever did, but it's not looking real good right now, and another year or so down the road could be worse, is the contract extension he gave Victor Rask. He gave him a 6-year, $24 million deal. So far this year, for making $6 million, Victor Rask only has 28 points, so that's, you know, it's not the worst contract in the NHL by any means, but it's just another case of a deal that's certainly not looking fantastic right now, and as time goes on, could potentially look worse, where he still has 4 years remaining on that contract. But for me, the biggest thing was just the fact that he never really made any big moves. There was no bold approach here to bring in any significant players at all to kind of help this team out, and he's had 4 years to do it. So if the when the new ownership comes in and says, "So you've had 4 years of this job, what have you done?" He just really didn't have a lot to show for it. Like, he did accumulate decent draft picks when they shipped players out, but he never really brought in any NHL players. And the whole draft and develop concept is great. You do need to do that, but that takes a while. And in a market where you're struggling for attendance and struggling to put a winning product on the ice, you need to do more than just draft and develop. You need to attract some other players that are more experienced that come in and help with that. And in my opinion, that's where he fell short. Let's take a quick look here at the drafting record during Ron Francis' tenure as general manager. Obviously, for the most part, I think they can say that they've made out pretty well with their early selections in the draft during the last 4 years. Let's take a look back at 2014. Their first round pick was Hayden Fleury. Obviously, he's on the roster right now, finally having his first full season. 2015, their first round picks, they had Noah Hannafin. They also drafted Sebastian Aho that year. Obviously, that was a great find. Aho's turned out to be a fantastic player. 2016, they drafted Jake Bean, as well as Julien Gauthier, who's playing right now in the AHL, but I think Julien Gauthier has a potential to be a pretty good NHL player. Certainly had a lot of scoring prowess in junior, and we'll see if he can translate that to the NHL, but to me, that was a good draft pick. And then last year, they drafted Martin Neshkash of the Czech Republic, who so far looks to be really solid offensive player. So when he gets into their lineup, obviously at some point here, he's going to have an impact on his club as well. So of all these picks, I mean, a few of them are in the lineup and a few of them are still developing. So maybe in a few years' time, maybe Ron Francis will get a little bit more credit and for drafting some of these guys. But at the same time, you get to wonder how much of that is Ron Francis and how much of that goes to their scouting staff and whatnot. Obviously, he's not the only guy that plays a role in the draft. So I don't know the team inside and out. Maybe if you're a big Hurricanes fan and you know some of their scouting staff, or you know more about that side of their hockey operations, maybe you can leave a comment down below. And how much credit do you think Ron Francis deserves for some of these draft picks? So all in all, I certainly agree with this move. I think it's good for the Hurricanes to move in a new direction here. Obviously, things that just have not worked. Ron Francis seems to be, he's one of the best players of all time. Seems to be a pretty good guy, but you know what? At the end of the day, that doesn't matter with moving in a direction. The franchise in the right direction here to get it back on track and get it back on being a consistent winning product and making the playoffs and so on, and trying to get better as a group. So I certainly have no problem with the move. I'm not surprised by this at all. The timing does come a little bit odd, but at the same time, I guess if they want to have lots of time to get a new guy in place before we get to the draft or free agency, then it's probably wise that they start looking now. The only concern, I guess, with doing this so early is if they're going to be looking at other potential candidates here to replace him that might already be either in a general manager role or in an assistant general manager role with a good opportunity to move up. A lot of the teams are probably not going to want to give permission for the Hurricanes to speak to their people just yet. A lot of that's probably not going to go down until the off season. So depending on when their team's season's finished, it's hard to say when they'll get permission to speak to people or not. So it kind of depends. Obviously, Tom Dundon is a very experienced and successful businessman. So maybe he's got outside sources. Maybe there's other people that are out of the business completely that right now that he is aware of and maybe talking to. I'm not sure about that. But here's a list of some potential candidates I put together. They're by no means are any of these people linked to the Hurricanes directly. These are just people, in my opinion, that would make either have been or would make good general managers in the NHL. And that they could consider as replacements. So let's take a look at some of the assistant general managers around the NHL that seem to get a lot of credit for doing a good job and are likely to be a GM someday here in the league. You get New Jersey, you get Tom Fitzgerald. He might be a good candidate. You've got Billy Guerin in Pittsburgh. Billy Guerin has done a great job as assistant GM with the Penguins. There's Paul Fenton in Nashville as well. Paul Fenton's been with the Nashville Predators as assistant GM for quite a long time now. Done a fantastic job and gets a lot of good reviews. So I think at some point he'll be GM in the NHL. Hard to say if he kind of waits out for David Poile to retire or if he moves on to a new opportunity should want to rise like this. There's also Craig Conroy in Calgary. I think he's done a pretty good job from what I've seen. I think Craig Conroy is a potential candidate as well. One guy who is still working in the NHL but not in an official GM position, who does have a lot of experience as well, as Dean Lombardi. Obviously, Dean Lombardi is working with the Flyers organization right now. And I know at the end of things there, a lot of Kings fans were ready for him to go based on how he get them into some bad contracts and salary cap issues and whatnot. But at the end of the day, Dean Lombardi can say one thing. He's got 2 Stanley Cup rings. which obviously at the same time, he may have made some mistakes, but he does know how to build a winner, and that really shows a lot. Those Stanley Cup rings are looking quite good on his resume. So I wouldn't be surprised if he does get another opportunity at some point as a general manager in the NHL. And maybe this is a case where Tom Dundon might want some good, valuable experience there and bring in somebody like that who's not the first time at the job. So let me some thoughts down below. What do you think of this move by the Hurricanes? And what do you think of any of the potential candidates for replacing Ron Francis? Or if there's anybody else that I haven't mentioned that perhaps you think that could be linked to the Hurricanes or that might be good at the job, certainly leave some comments down below and let me know what you think. If this is your first time to the channel, please consider subscribing. We have daily uploads here and we cover all 31 NHL teams. Also, if you're new to the channel, consider checking us out on social media. You're going to see our Twitter handle on the screen right here. We're very active on Twitter, so check out that account. We're also on Facebook and Instagram, and all the links for those accounts are down below in the description. As always, thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.